Hello and welcome to the Rams Talk preview show. Today I'm joined by Derek, obviously of Bolton Wanderers. Derek, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Adam. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to having a chat about what will be, I'm sure, an absolute cracker on Saturday.
Yeah, a massive game, isn't it? Like I say, Derby County versus Bolton Wanderers this Saturday the 16th of March, closing in on the end of the season running. It's a huge game at the top of the table, obviously. Obviously, if you don't know, I'm sure you do know, Derby County we're second at the minute, 1 point ahead of Bolton, who are in third. And it's going to be a very good run into the end of the season, isn't it? That top six and almost probably that top four really drawing in for who's going to get the automatic promotion spots. But Derek, I'll ask you first about Bolton Wanderers' season so far and how it's gone. Obviously, you currently sit third in League One. How's it been from a Bolton Wanderers point of view?
It's been quite an exciting season so far. I've got to say, a lot of expectation around at the start of the season after finishing in the playoffs last term. Of course, disappointment at losing to Barnsley in the semis. Ian Evatt, we spoke to him after the game at Oakwell, and he said that they'll be aiming to go up in one of the top two automatic promotion places. So that brings about a bit of pressure, of course, but they started well, and then I think just a dip in form round about New Year, January, and a wee bit in February as well. A few wobbles, it's fair to say, but you can tie in with a number of injuries that Bolton have sustained during that period of time that have affected the team somewhat. But they've certainly lasted the pace. I know the game's coming thick and fast. It's a grueling old season, League One, of course, but they've lasted the pace. Portsmouth and you guys also up there in the running as well. So with 8 games remaining, it's certainly going to be an exciting end to the season. I'm sure a few nails will be chomped between now and the end of the season as well. It's a nervy time, the business end of the season, but looking forward to it. And they don't come much bigger than Saturday, of course. I don't think it'll define who will go up between Derby or Bolton, but it'll be a really intriguing game, I think. If the game at the Tough Sheet was anything to go by, I think it might be a close run thing.
Yeah, I think talking about that game back in, I think it was August, wasn't it? That game, August, September. Back then, obviously, early on in the season, Derby, we lost 2-1 to Bolton away. I thought we were outclassed in that game a little in terms of how the game went. I thought we were dominated a little. We had a couple of injuries and we'd come off the back of a good win against Peterborough, but we couldn't follow it up with a win against Bolton, who I thought looked really good when moving the ball, really dangerous and looked almost that next level to League One, I think, so early on the season, a continuation of the good season that you had last season. So coming into this game now, in terms of form, Derby, we've won 3 in our last games back to back. Bolton are unbeaten in 4. Obviously, Bolton have come off the back of a great midweek win against Oxford United, 5-0, a 5-star performance. Talk to us about that game. How did that game go? Is it as plain sailing as it says? And what were your expectations when heading into that? Did you think you'd come out in such a high margin winners?
I didn't expect 5-0, Adam, but it was 5-0 going on 10-0. Bolton were terrific last night. It was one of the, if not the performance of the season, one of the best under Ian Evatt, not only this season, but in his overall tenure as Bolton manager. They were magnificent, really, from start to finish, dominated from the off. Oxford were poor. I know I listened to the manager's press conference and one of the players afterwards, Owen Dale, and they apologised to the fans and said that they never really turned up in that game, but Bolton never let them play, really. And Oxford are a possession-based side, pretty much like Bolton, but they just suffocated them from start to finish. And one of the sort of criticisms that have been levelled at Bolton sometimes is they might blow away teams in the first half, but they'll get 1 or 2 goals up, and then they'll take their foot off the gas in the second, allow the opposition to creep back into the game. We've seen it last weekend down at Exeter when Bolton were well on top, but 2 quick-fire goals and suddenly they're chasing the game. But last night they were on top throughout, and some of the play was sublime. It really was a delight to watch. Everyone was in top form. It was a real difficulty selecting a man of the match last night. Such was the players that were playing on top of their game, each and every one of them, even the substitutes that came on as well. It really was a feel-good game that every fan that would have been turning up to the Tough Sheet last night will be hoping for heading into the game at the weekend, which will be completely different, I'd imagine. Derby, well, obviously the fans, you guys will be turning up looking for 3 points, I'd imagine. I think right now most Bolton fans, I think, would probably take a point at this point in time and then move on to the next game. International break comes at a good time as well with a number of injuries. But yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, last night it really was a joy to watch. And I'm sure when supporters, there'll be Bolton fans in the tough sheet last night, they've been checking their phones, checking results elsewhere. And I'm sure it would have been the same at Pride Park as well when the scores were filtering in and you've seen that Bolton had smashed Oxford by 5 goals to 0. I'm sure there'll be a few thinking, we could be in for a game here.
Yeah, I think such a stunning performance from Bolton Wanderers at this business end of the season is huge, and it's so important. You don't want to change too much come the end of the season. If you can find some great form heading into these final, 8 or 9 games to go?
Yeah.
I think about 8 games now. Then yeah, it's huge. Derby, obviously, in our last match we beat Reading 2-1. Maybe a little bit fortunately, as you could see, some of the refereeing decisions went our way quite favourably, especially the red card and the penalty in that game. Talking about now Bolton's top players now, obviously I can look on the stats on paper, but you know better than me, Derek. I'm looking here now. Obviously, Dion Charles, we know how good he is. I think he dispatched a penalty earlier on this season against Derby in that game. You've also got Josh Sheehan, who's got 11 assists as well. But talk to us, who's the players that Derby County fans will have to watch out for at Pride Park on Saturday? Who are the players who are really gonna turn the game?
No, you don't need to worry about Dion because he's been out injured for some time, which has been a huge blow. Whether he gets, I think we're looking at the Stevenage game on Good Friday when he may make a return. He suffered a reaction to his knee injury that he's been out for some time, so that is hugely unfortunate. Lost Victor Adebayejo last weekend to a serious hamstring injury. We may not see him again until next season, which is a massive blow. So Wanderers reliant on the likes of Jon Daddy Budvarsson, Cameron Jerome, who came on as a substitute last night, and Aaron Collins, the January signing from Bristol Rovers. A lot of money spent on him. Scored last night. Wonderful goal. It finished off a brilliant move. So those three, they're hanging the hat on at this moment in time to get the goals. So there's a bit of a striker crisis at Bolton. No Victor Adebayejo, no Dion Charles. Carlos Mendes Gomez is out for upwards. I think we're not going to see him, perhaps not even before the season after next. He's ruptured his Achilles, which is a massive disappointment as well, just when he was starting to find a bit of form. So really struggling up top, but as I touched on earlier on, it's a whole team effort that got the victory last night in the Ryan, and not just on the forward players, but the likes of the wing backs who love to bomb forward. They got the 2 opening goals last night. Josh Dakers-Cogley and Nat Ogbeta over on that left-hand side, but they've got plenty of options, Bolton. They do like to bomb forward. Over on the left, it remains to be seen if Nat will play on Saturday. Ian Evatt does like to chop and change his wing-backs. Randell Williams might come in on the left. He's also got Zach Ashworth there as well. Over on the right-hand side, as I mentioned, Josh has been pretty much ever-present in the team this season. Calvin Ramsey hasn't really got a look in, despite being brought on loan from Liverpool, on loan in the January transfer window. Gethin Jones can play at right wing back as well. So there is plenty of options elsewhere. It's the middle of the park, though. I think that's Wanderers' strength. You mentioned there Josh Sheehan, Adam. He's well-deserved call-up to the Welsh national team for their Euro 2024 playoffs. For me, he's been the player of the season. Scored last night, an absolute beauty. Just sort of caressed the ball into the far corner from the edge of the area. He'll try and dictate the tempo and the game. He's been one of the most targeted players in the league, and he revels in that. I mean, you often see him on the deck, players going through him and such like, but we've spoke to him a good few times about that, and he says, bring it on. He might be short in stature, but he loves to mix it with the best of them. So I'm sure he'll be looking forward immensely to the challenge at Pride Park on Saturday. Paris Magoma has shown his quality at various points this season as well. He's on loan from Brentford. He's another one that could be a potential match winner at the weekend. Then you've got George Thomason, who has been a revelation this season. Everyone maybe a bit surprised when Bristol City offered upwards of £1 million for him at the start of the season, but he knocked it back. He wanted to remain part of the Wanderers squad, and he's just blossomed into a real proper, industrious midfielder, likes to put the boot in at times, and he's earned a little bit of a reputation somewhat that I don't think is quite fair to him. He has broke the record for the number of bookings in a season at Bolton. 18 he's received, which eclipses El Hadj Diouf's 16 many years ago. But I think it's a bit unfair. I think his reputation sometimes goes before him when he makes a challenge. Referees that are quick to reach into their pocket and show a yellow card. But certainly in the middle of that park, those three players have been instrumental to Bolton at this moment in time. Then that's not even mentioning the likes of Kyle Dempsey, who's contributed. And there are others in that midfield area who can certainly contribute for Bolton. So I think that's maybe where the game will be won or lost at the weekend.
Yeah, I think you talk about the individual quality there of so many players. It will be the same story for Derby. Obviously, we've got a couple of, in my opinion, some of the division's best, similar to Bolton do, all over the pitch. You know, Derby, you've mentioned that Bolton like to chop and change wing backs. I think we're the same. We've seen Louis Sibley come into that left wing back position, even though he's primarily been used as a central midfielder or a bit further forward in that midfield position. You know, we've got Mendes Lang, who will probably play out wide on the right with most assists this season for us. You know, we've also got Dwight Gale, who's coming to form. You talk about the striker situation that Bolton find themselves in. You know, Derby, I think we sort of found ourselves in it a couple of weeks back, just after the January transfer window closed, where James Collins, our top goal scorer, got injured, and we were sort of looking around, not really with a natural striker. And then Dwight Gale signed on a free, and he's hit form straight away, which is superb to see. I think he's equalled the amount of goals he scored for Stoke in about 50 appearances in 3 or 4 matches for Derby County. I know it's not many goals, but it's nice to see him on form, and he'll be a key part to play in Saturday's fixture. So we talk about the individual quality. I think Bolton and Derby are up there with two of the teams with the best squads, in my opinion, in that first 11 in terms of the quality that they possess. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes man to man and how they line up against each other. You know, you mentioned the wing backs. Derby, I know, certainly like to go for wing backs at home and get up the pitch quickly after soaking up pressure. And I know against Reading we did put on a bit of a press as well to stop them playing. You quickly mentioned that the wing backs, but how are Bolton going to line up against Derby tactically in terms of the formation, a couple of players in terms of personnel? I know you touched upon some of the wing backs and the strikers. But how do you expect Bolton to line up on Saturday?
It'll be just as they normally line up. I don't think Ian Evatt has deviated much since he took over. It'll be a 4-2. I'm just trying to think. It'll be 3 at the back, 2 wing backs, 2 holding midfielders, a player just in front of those 2, and a front 2 pairing, I'd imagine. Off the top of my head, you'll be going for that same midfield as I touched on, I'd imagine. He might bring Kyle Dempsey in for Paris Magoma, but on this sort of form, I don't think you alter that too much. So it'll be Sheen Thomas and Magoma in the middle. Collins and Budvarsson will continue up top, I'd imagine, with a back 3 of Jones, Santos, and Toll. The 2 wing, it might be unchanged. The only change I could possibly see happening is Ogbeta coming out and Randell Williams coming in over on that left-hand side. I think that is the one change that I wouldn't be surprised if he were to make that. He did make 3 changes last night to the team. One was enforced, of course, with Adebayo dropping out. The 2 others, Iredale came out and Williams dropped out as well. But you often find that the bench that Ian Evatt has at his disposal is a very strong looking bench. It has been decimated somewhat with injuries, especially in the forward line, like I mentioned there. But they are hopeful, as I mentioned. Dion Charles, if he comes back for the Good Friday game, touchwood. Nathan Baxter is another one. He's been out injured for some time with a wrist injury. He's now had the Flint taken off, and it's also hopeful he'll be back in contention for the game against Stevenage. So Joe Coleman has been the goalkeeper for Bolton in recent weeks. He has come in for a bit of criticism, it's fair to say, but I think that the clean sheet he got last night will do him the world of good in terms of confidence. But yeah, I think that's how Wanderers will line up. Ian Evatt doesn't really deviate from the style of play and the system that he adopts in each and every game. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They'll try and play out from the back. At times, they do go a bit more direct. And I wonder if he'll do that against Derby, because I'm sure Paul Warne will be itching his team to put pressure on the Wanderers' backline. Ricardo Santos likes time on the ball, and I'm sure he'll be telling his players just to try and give him as little time as possible on it. So yeah, it'll be intriguing to see how the two teams match up against each other.
Yeah, I think I agree. I do think one thing I want is I don't want it to be a cagey game. I don't want it to be a stalemate throughout. I think that's what I want to see. I want to see goals from these two teams and see the quality on display. I think if it's a cagey game, then we could be heading for a draw. I think if the floodgates open early on or within that first half, then we could be in for quite an entertaining match as well in terms of how I think Derby will line up. I think maybe it will be that 5 at the back. Paul Warne has deviated a couple of times. I think maybe making it a 4 at the back here and there and pushing someone further up. I think we know that the starting lineup probably won't change. It was unchanged for the Reading game. I know it's a lot of games back to back for the same 11, but I can't imagine it will change too much. So I'm interested to see how this game will go in terms of, I think a score prediction is too difficult to say at this stage. I don't think we're close enough to the match for that. But in terms of how Bolton's season's going to continue, obviously we know how tight it is at the top of the table. Everybody knows that in terms of, Portsmouth are only just 5 points clear. Derby are making ground on them. Bolton have come up only a point behind Derby. Obviously Barnsley, I know they've suffered a bad result against Lincoln, I think, last Saturday as well, but they've come back and changed that. But how do you see that end of the season going? Do you think Bolton can get that second or top spot, or do you think it's going to be playoffs? How do you imagine it going?
I hope so. I think it's going to go right to the wire. Pompey, you touched on, they seem to just be keeping themselves at arm's length at the top, don't they? I can see them getting one of the top two. Then I think it's between the likes of ourselves, Derby, Barnsley. I think are still in the mix. Had a good result last night after being absolutely demolished at the weekend against Lincoln, who are scoring goals for fun at the moment. So I think it's going to be one of those three. I'm sure that Peterborough will have something to say about that. But I think it's going to go right down to the wire. Some interesting games coming up. This one, of course, as I touched on, I don't think it'll determine if Derby win or indeed if Bolton win, who is going to go up automatically. The Wanderers fans, Ian touched on it last night, just happy to stay in the mix at this moment in time. I did mention that the injury situation, and it's been a real strong pace. The top teams in the division, I think all the top 4 won last night, didn't they? So it's, as I mentioned earlier on, fans are checking their phones to see if any team's going to slip up. In fact, that the week that Bolton did slip up, the 2 derbies, Wigan and Blackpool, we're looking over to the Derby results, and we've seen that you guys slipped up twice as well. So I think you got away with one a little bit there. But listen, I think it's going to be like this, toing and froing until the end of the season. Wanderers finish up away to Peterborough. I was hoping that we could go down there and it'd be a bit of a carnival atmosphere, and automatic promotion is already guaranteed. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be the case, but I can't call it at this moment in time, Adam. I hope that Bolton do it. They certainly get enough quality in the team to go up automatically. I'm sure you guys would say the same, but I think Portsmouth and one other at this point.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think Portsmouth, I think they do have a difficult run in that end of the season. They've got to play quite a few teams in that top 6. They've still got to play us, unfortunately for them, at home, which is another massive game for us. And like you say, I think Derby lost at the same point, Bolton lost. It seems like that's been the story. We seem to win at the same time every week and lose at the same time every week. No, we seem to be stuck just sort of at that level at the moment, I think. Yeah, Portsmouth have a difficult running, but I think the quality they have and the form that they've had all season means that they probably do have one hand on that title. I think that second spot is so difficult to predict. Derby, we're not known for holding out these sort of good positions at the end of the season. I think numerous times in the Championship we've been known to drop points in games where we've been the favourites, and we know Derby's playoff record isn't the best in recent years, probably in the last 10 years. So definitely going to be an interesting one come the end of the season. I can't predict it myself, to be honest. I think Derby, we've had a couple of fortunate results go our way. I'm quite glad that we've not got to play Lincoln. I was quickly checking if we still had to, because they seem to, like you say, in fine form, and they've got Portsmouth last game of the season. Derby, we've got Carlisle at home last game this season, quite a favourable match, but I wouldn't say we've got 3 points in it at all until that final whistle of that game's blown, and we know the result there. So yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. I think it's difficult to call this match. It's probably the biggest match of the weekend. I think all eyes are
Yeah.
going to be on this. I know there's quite a few big games going on this weekend, but a huge match, quite a few big matches coming up now, and I don't think it's going to be easy to predict that end of the season finish. So, Derek, thanks for coming on. You've been a real pleasure to have on, and a really big help when talking about how we think it's going to go. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please rate us 5 stars on whatever you're listening on. If you didn't enjoy it, feel free not to rate us and leave our good rating. You can catch this podcast. You can watch us on YouTube as they go out live every week, twice a week in the preview and post podcast, and you can listen to us on all your favorite podcast platforms, and you can see us all on the social medias in the description below. So thank you for listening to the Rams Talk podcast preview show ahead of Bolton Wanderers on Saturday.